Asher held the iridescent crystal in her hand as she powered up the E-drive. Her ship rattled during the jump. An alarm about its condition blared that she had learned to ignore since she stole it. As the stars and the nebulas of space stretched and warped into colourful streaks before the ship's speed, she relaxed in the creaking chair. Maybe he was wrong, she whispered, watching the crystal absorb and refract light like a kaleidoscope. She had managed to escape the strange alien structure alive with her trophy, but the cost was high. The lives of the others. All for her brother. Once his dreams were windows to the future, surreal paintings that turned into portents of bountiful harvests and seasons of drought back home. But now he seemed trapped in his own mind, muttering coordinates and the words prison and crystal. I hope this works, little brother. I'm almost home, Asher said, placing the crystal on the console and observing the readings on the monitor. Her eyes gleamed at the information displayed on the screen. The ship was changing direction. Despite my empathy for Asher, now that I'm out of that dungeon, I will save my brothers, not hers. Hello and welcome to the Bad Spot, an actual play podcast where I, Matt Risby, and I alone am playing through Ironsworn Starforged. This week's tale from the Drift was from Cainã Nascimento, who has written this quite wonderful piece in what is his second language, which is mind-boggling to me, although I am British, so anyone being able to speak more than one language is basically magic by my reckoning. I want to give a huge Bad Spot thank you to Cainã for being so generous with his work and sharing it with us, and I am thrilled to have shared it with all of you. If you want to roll some dice and write something for me to read at the beginning of a future episode, then the submission guidelines and contact details are on screen now. And whilst I have you, why don't you leave a like, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so you can follow along with the campaign each and every week. These things are hugely important for supporting the channel and supporting what I do, and if you really want to support the channel, then why not check out the Bad Spot Patreon. There you'll get early access to all episodes, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and your name on screen like all these lovely people. So last time out, having fled the scene of the gunfight, Luna tried to find more information as to Archer's whereabouts. Using the simple comms device taken from the hired gun, she hacks into it and discovers the origin of the signal, inferring from that as to where Archer is being held. Unfortunately for her, it is at the very top of the last port complex, while she finds herself at the very bottom. She dons a makeshift disguise in order to not draw attention to herself, and as she leaves, the device receives another message, alerting her to the landing bay and more specifically to the Eclipse. She heads to the hangar where she runs into Cole, and the pair watch as they find the Eclipse under heavy, armed guard. Cole shares his information about how it is impossible to leave this sector, and the two realise that the navigational data aboard the Eclipse that plotted the route through the spine of Kronos must now be incredibly valuable. The armed guards are drawn away from the Eclipse by the seemingly unexpected arrival of an emissary from the Pact, which causes considerable consternation, and a tense standoff ensues. As the two parties face off, Cole and Luna watch on in disbelief as Griff uses the distraction to board the Eclipse, starts the engines, and takes off. Elsewhere, we see the Conduit piloting a spacecraft, distressed and dishevelled. She is transporting the body of Blake Sutton somewhere, and as she drops out of the drift, we see she has arrived at a clan blockade, and two snub fighters are dispatched to intercept her. Despite being in what appears to be imminent danger, she seems somehow relieved. So, last time there wasn't a great deal of dice rolling. It was just all pretty much narrative. I think there was one move and a couple of oracle rolls in there, and I like doing those episodes, to be honest. I'm happy to just go with whatever's in my head if I have a solid idea about something, and also if I feel like I can work some more kind of character stuff in, or kind of pull on a narrative thread, as it were. And I really enjoy doing those. And I actually wrote a little production diary about this for my patrons. So if you want to check out like how I approach making the show in general, you will find what will be monthly production diaries on there, with, you know, just some of my musings and things about like how I go about this stuff, because I do get asked, and most of the time I'm just kind of struggling. It's like, but you know, if I really stop and think about it, I have done it for a reason. I just often don't know what it is. So I thought it'd be interesting to share, and if you want to, you can find them there. But anyway, once I did actually roll some dice last time, the rolls that did get made, specifically those 2 Oracle rolls at the end of the episode, they really mixed things up, and they kind of set my narrative wheels spinning. But I'm not going to get into what that means now. That will all become apparent later, because now we've got ourselves in a real situation, because Luna and Cole are kind of looking on in disbelief, really, because they've just seen Griff, right? This rarely functional, always unreliable survey bot come toaster, and they've seen him kind of go aboard and fire up the engines of the Eclipse, and they've just realised that the Eclipse is very important, right? And Griff is taking off. And there are 3 kind of interested parties watching this happen now. There are Luna and Cole. There is the security detail who have been guarding the Eclipse, the kind of heavily armed mercenaries, and then also the Pact. And I think that it's very likely that all hell is going to break loose here. And always one to kind of charge boldly into action. I think Luna's just going to go. I think she's just going to make a break for it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to retcon the end of last episode slightly to say that the landing ramp is actually still up, just to give Luna something to aim for. And I think she is going to see her opportunity and go for it. She grabs Cole by the wrist. She focuses on the ramp and she just bolts. She makes a run for it. If she can get there, she can jump on the ramp and get aboard. She can't fly, which is why she's dragging Cole along with her. So let's jump right in and start making moves. And that move is going to be Face Danger, which says when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. So I think this is going to be with Edge, because we are moving quickly. We are making a dash for it. We are just trying to get there and get aboard. So let's Face Danger, rolling, plus Edge. Holy shit. What a start. Double tens. I have 10 momentum that I now can't use, which makes that even more galling. I mean, that's galling and deeply upsetting, I'm going to say. When your momentum is your safety net and you can't use it, what good is it? This is terrible. Let's read what it says. It says, on a miss, you fail. Kel surprise, or a momentary success is undermined by a dire turn of events to pay the price. So it's safe to say we don't make it. We don't get there. And it's going to have consequences, right? It's going to have consequences in terms of Griff and the Eclipse. I have had it in my head now that Griff he's kind of had this directive activated somehow inside him by Professor Darwin. She did it remotely at the end of the last episode. We don't know what it is or what it does or where he's going or what this new Griff wants or where he's going. And I actually didn't mean for him to kind of get away from Luna in the market, the shootout. That just kind of happened because she kept rolling. Yeah, it's her responsibility. She kept rolling these shitty dice. But it kind of, her losing Griff just kind of adds a bit more stakes to it, you know, just kind of gives us a bit more conflict and, you know, some stuff to resolve and some drama, because what is drama if not conflict resolution, eh? But now we've got to the point where he's actually gone, or he might actually leave. And kind of just by having him last episode get away from Luna in the shootout, I've kind of made a rod for my own back here, and I'm just gonna have to go with it. So I think in terms of paying the price, the most obvious negative outcome to happen is for Griff and the Eclipse to actually leave Lastport. So let's envision this. Luna with kind of Cole being dragged behind. They're starting to to close the distance to the eclipse. And they're moving pretty quickly, but there's a lot of chaos still, and that's good for them because they kind of don't stand out. Like, they're a hangar crew kind of scattering, and as the eclipse lifts up and it begins to take off, I think like bits of scaffolding fall away from it, and like kind of fuel lines and tethers are just kind of pinging free, and alarms are going off. And I think the mercenaries who have been kind of sent to guard the ship haven't prepared for this, and they don't really know what to do. So I think what they're going to do in this moment is like open fire, like on the ship. Like, they spray the hull with small arms fire, and that sends Luna and Cole kind of like sprawling to the floor, trying to take cover, trying to hit the ground so they don't get shot, so they don't get caught in the crossfire. And as they do, they see the eclipse rising up, and Luna tries to get to her feet, but more gunfire comes in and it forces her back down, and she's covering her head as the sparks are raining down, and she watches the eclipse getting higher and higher, and she tries to get up again, but Cole this time kind of pulls her back and pulls her down as shots kind of slam into the crates that they're hunkering behind. And she's frustrated, she's pinned down, and she's just watching helplessly as the eclipse engines roar, and it lifts further and further out of reach. So Luna needs to do something else, and she leans out from where she's taking cover, and she sees the emissary, the packed emissary, and the acolytes, and they're kind of heading back towards, in the direction that she can like assume, I think, that is, you know, their ship where they landed. And she thinks, and probably correctly here, that they are going to scramble to try and kind of go after the eclipse. And then she sees one of the mercenaries jumping on their comms, and I think it's likely that they are calling in maybe some interceptors to go and kind of get the eclipse. And Luna is sizing this up very quickly. She's not someone who likes to think in great depth about her plans. And whatever plan that she does have, she is already in the middle of doing it, because she has already pulled out her rifle from its kind of wrapping on her back. And I think what she's going to do is she's going to open fire. And she's going to do that in an effort to seed more chaos, basically, to kind of take this already chaotic situation and confuse things further, because she doesn't want anyone going after the eclipse. She's rightly worked out that no one has clocked them. There's just lots and lots of people around. So to the two parties involved, they may as well just be two members of ground crew or hangar technicians that are caught up in the crossfire. No one's paying them any attention. So she's going to use that to her advantage. So she is going to line up a shot, and she is going to take it. And the purpose of doing this is to get the two groups to stop worrying about the eclipse and to start worrying about each other. So this is going to be another move. And that move is going to be secure an advantage, which says when you assess a situation, make preparations, or attempt to gain leverage, envision your action and roll. So I think what we're doing here is we are trying to sow a bit of confusion, right? We are doing that to allow ourselves to escape. And also, I think crucially to buy Griff a bit of time. Luna and Cole can't reach the ship now, but they might be able to get it later at some point. They just need it not to be shot out of the sky to do that. If the Pact are here for the eclipse, which she thinks they are, then it's going to be easier for them to do that if it's just out in space, rather than kind of try and prize it from the clutches of whoever's in charge of last port, because there's considerable tension between these groups, right? So what Luna's going to do is she's going to try and kind of engineer a shootout between these two parties to try and kind of stall things. And she doesn't know if this is going to work. This is a Luna plan. So this is going to be, I think, secure an advantage using deception, I guess, because it's about causing a distraction, causing chaos. So I think rolling plus shadow is our best option. So Luna picks a target in amongst the chaos, and she pulls the trigger. So let's see if we can cause a scene. Securing an advantage, rolling plus shadow. Jesus Christ, this is some start to the episode. That's another miss. And there's not really a way out of it other than to burn our momentum. So at least there's no 10s in there. We can handle an 8 and a 6. So let's burn our momentum and turn this big fat miss into a strong hit. Okay, so we'll reset our momentum back down to 2. Then it says, on a hit, you succeed. On a strong hit, take both. On a weak hit, choose 1. And we got +2 momentum and +1 on our next move. And that's good. We get both of those. And then actually the burn doesn't hurt us anywhere near as much as it could have done because we're going to go back up to 4. Which is good, and we get +1 on our next move, which is, it's an all-round good thing. We had to burn our momentum to do it, but, what you're going to do, you got to use it. So, Luna, crouching behind the crates, she leans out of cover, and she kind of identifies her target. She picks out one of the acolytes, who is much like the others, pale-skinned and kind of like wiry-haired, and they're snapping off shots at the Eclipse with this strange, ornate little rust-covered pistol that Luna's never seen the likes of before. It's ineffective, but they are kind of driven by fervor. Their kind of faces is twisted in puritanical rage. And Luna has him in her sights and waits until someone is just about to come in and block her view. And before they do, she squeezes off the shot and she wings the acolyte. She kind of spins him round and sends him falling backwards. And the other acolytes who are with them look back in the direction from where the shot came and can only see the mercenaries stood amongst the chaos. And they aim their pistols back and start firing at them. They're not focusing on the Eclipse anymore. And this draws the mercenaries off. They're not shooting at the Eclipse now either. They're trying to figure out who is firing at them. And it only takes them a second to figure that out. They go to ground, they take cover, and then they return fire. And now the Eclipse is gaining altitude and it's about to exit last port. Luna watches it go. She watches as Griff disappears on whatever mission he is on. And this was the best case scenario. Like, although she probably doubts Archer's going to quite see it that way when she tells him, but that's a future Luna problem. She looks back now into the hangar at what is rapidly spiraling out of control. The mercenaries, who have these kind of big automatic weapons and military training, are now focusing on the acolytes, who have the numbers, but they have little else. They're just wearing robes with these little kind of pop guns that just aren't much use for anything, really. And the mercenaries are just kind of mowing them down, just cutting them down. And the emissary is being kind of protected and hustled back towards his ship. And he's got those 2 vanguards with him, those 2 guards kind of trying to protect him. And but the problem is that I think I mentioned before, last episode, the arrival of the Pact has brought everyone out of the woodwork to the hangar bay. The denizens of Lastport, the criminal elements, all the ne'er-do-wells and miscreants of this place are now in position to take advantage of this moment of weakness for the Pact, who are now vulnerable. And yeah, they've sensed the opportunity. The Pact are in charge of this entire sector, but now they've come here trying to throw their weight around, and it looks like they have bitten off more than they can chew, and they are vulnerable and outnumbered. And suddenly, they're not just fighting off the mercenaries. Everyone seems to be taking this moment to turn the tables. And the acolytes just get rushed by everyone, by ground crew, criminals, mercenaries, and they rush towards the emissary and his ship as well. And Luna takes that as their cue to leave. And she stands up and she kind of looks back, and she can see one of the vanguard, this kind of tall, imposing figure in this kind of immaculate bronzed armor and kind of like shining through the haze of smoke and gunfire that's filling the hangar. And the vanguard twirls their ornate pike expertly and is cutting down 1, then 2, then 3 people who are trying to bring them down in this flurry of blood and metal. It's this awesome display of power and precision, but the odds are stacked against them, and within seconds they are consumed by the crowd. And at that point, Luna can no longer see the other vanguard or the emissary, but it is not looking good for them. Whatever plan this was, if you can even call it a plan, it's worked, and she doesn't want to push her luck any further and hang around in the hangar any longer, so she needs to get the hell out of there. So she grabs Cole, and they run, and everyone else who is coming in is like going in the opposite direction. Like, they are the only people leaving the hangar. Like, all these people have heard as what's gone on, and they have like started to flood the hangar for a share of the spoils. The focus is now not on the eclipse, which is a good thing. So before we carry on, is this a milestone? Did we reach a milestone? Like, the pack turning up was a big deal. Learning that the eclipse is important is definitely meaningful insight, but actually, no, of course, this isn't a milestone, is it? Like, we lost the eclipse on a result of a miss and a match, and we've just kind of styled this out. What am I talking about? We have not escaped the situation, and the net result is no Griff and no eclipse. So it's not progress, is it? I don't know what I'm talking about. Sorry. Okay, anyway, let's forget milestones and focus on the task at hand, which is to rescue Archer. We've got Cole with us now. Let's use him. So I think that as they're running across the hangar, kind of barging past people, Luna sees a data pad laying on on an abandoned workbench, and as she runs past, she kind of sticks out a hand and grabs it and passes it back to Cole and says, "Find us a way out of here. Service lift, anything." And she needs him to do it because, like, she's kind of in charge of moving them just generally out of the hangar. She's barging people out of the way as they try and get in. The word has travelled very quickly around Lastport that what's happened here. So now there's this seething mass of people moving in. Luna and Cole, like I said, are the only ones leaving. So Luna feels a tug at her sleeve after a few moments, and it's Cole, and he's kind of pointing off in a direction, and he's focused down on the data pad, trying not to get trampled, and he's kind of pulling her towards this kind of like small door that is kind of between two docking bays, and it's kind of out of the way. It's clear of the scrum, and it gives them a second to gather themselves. So what's actually happening? Like back where we came from, it's like really frenzied now. We've established that, and it's so much so they can't even really pick out what's going on. But in a wider context, like, what's going on? Should we kind of try and work out what's happening in Lastport and then react to that? I think because when Luna is in reactive mode, we get some more interesting kind of fight or flight responses. So I think what we're going to do is ask the Oracle to see what is going on in Lastport in a wider sense. 92 is suppress, and 52 is law. Suppress law. I mean, we did establish that Lastport has no kind of obvious law enforcement, or no visible law enforcement, but we could kind of like work backwards from that in a sense. What we could say is that maybe the situation is so bad down in the hangar that even in this lawless place, someone has had to like step in and do something drastic, like perhaps like put measures in place that have not been seen in some time or even ever. Yeah, like an emergency protocol. Like, someone somewhere has heard or seen what's going on and like blown the dust off a button that's not been pressed in ages and just pressed it. The old break glass in case of emergency button. Like, shit has got real. So we are going to see an appropriate response from someone somewhere, and who can even speculate as to who that someone somewhere must be. So this has happened, and this is kind of generally going to feed into what's going on. So Luna is in the doorway, and like, she alongside Cole is watching people rushing past them, and like they are now out of the tsunami of people flooding down the corridor that they've just ducked out of, and she spins the handle on the door, and it opens, and she pokes her head through and aiming her gun down just to be sure, and she sees a low-ceilinged, cramped, but otherwise empty or deserted service corridor. Cole, expertly, well done, has found them a quiet escape route. And she kind of gives him a smile and gives him an approving nod. And as they're about to step through the door, literally just as she does, this deep honking siren blares like a klaxon, and like it's so loud it forces both Luna and Cole to cover their ears, and it's accompanied by red flashing lights everywhere, and the people flooding through the corridor behind them start to like slow down. They look confused. They don't really know what to do. And then Luna sees something like panic start to spread through the crowd, and she kind of knows what that means. So she doesn't want to hang around to see what's going on. So she pushes Cole through the door and then steps through herself and then spins the handle to close it on the other side. And not wanting this escape route to be compromised, I think she kind of looks down on the floor and finds like an old wrench or something and clamps it around the wheel and wedges it against the frame. So like that's not watertight, but it might buy them a bit of time if someone was to try and follow them. And I think she's right to do that as well, because like within a few seconds the wheel, like someone's trying to turn it from the other side, and she shares this look with Cole that says that they better get out of here sharpish. And Cole like looks back at his data pad and points up the corridor in a direction, signaling that it's that way to the elevator. And not wasting any time, they kind of crouch down and hustle along towards the elevator. When they get there, Cole like anxiously hammers the button to call it, and it's still in use. Like this obviously isn't the main elevator because this is on a little side corridor. This must be like a service or repair elevator. And there's this kind of short, nervous wait for it to arrive, and when it does, Luna has her gun ready and kind of inspects the interior as the doors slide open, and thankfully it's empty. It's unremarkable. It's industrial. It's wide for kind of all sorts of unloading of goods and people being moved around this vast complex. It's about kind of 4 meters square, I'd say, and it's got like metal grating underfoot. I mean, I don't want to describe this too much. It's unremarkable. It's an unremarkable industrial elevator. And I think inside the klaxon is still kind of continuing to blare, and the red lights even down here are kind of spinning as they step inside. Now, I think we said that Archer is at the very top of the last port complex, and we're at the very bottom. And Luna is kind of looking at that now on Cole's data pad. And I think this elevator doesn't go all the way to the top, but it goes kind of like near enough. It will take them kind of most of the way. So she hits the up button and the doors slide closed. And after a second, the carriage begins its journey upwards, and the noise of the machine is pretty loud, but they can still hear the sirens screeching. It's just generally like an unpleasant noise inside this like tin can, but they are on the move. So here's a question. If the emergency button has been pressed by someone somewhere, as we have decided it has been, at what point does the complex lock down? Like, is the disturbance in the hangar bay isolated and contained? Like, can it be managed, confined to that area? Is kind of that enough? And I think what made me consider this is the fact that it was like the pact down there. Like, this is very serious. Like I said earlier, like I've been thinking a lot about how significant their arrival is here. And whilst I do have some narrative irons starting to heat in the fire with regards to that I will bring in later, does their presence here warrant like a full complex lockdown, especially with the reaction of what's gone on down there? It would be a severe reaction, but like I said, someone's pressed the button. Someone's pressed this button to kind of say, you know, emergency protocols in place. Like, is a full lockdown part of that, or is that too severe? I'll tell you what, let's ask the Oracle. So let's say it's 50-50, yes or no. With whatever emergency measures have been put into place, has Lastport been put into full complex lockdown? 22 is yes. So that's going to have some implications, right? Like the elevator is just kind of going round the core of the complex, and I had this idea that the way this works is that there's this kind of central column that goes between all the levels, and the elevators run around the outside of this column like a kind of like in a corkscrew motion, and kind of that's what they're doing. They're making progress. They're working their way up. And then Luna feels something in her pocket, and it's the comms device. She gets a ping on it, and she digs it out and looks at the screen, and it's just this blur of text, but there's one word that just keeps jumping out at her, and that word is lockdown. And she shows the message to Cole, who is not fully paying attention. He's kind of more worried about what's on his data pad. But before Luna can ask what it is, the lights go out in the carriage, and it comes to a violent and sudden halt. And they're plunged into darkness as the lights go out. These kind of emergency lights come on a few seconds later, this kind of sickly yellow light. And whilst the siren and the alarms are still going, it's now slightly different. It's like a slightly less shrill pitch, but still very intense and very noticeable. And Luna looks at Cole anxiously and says, "Where are we?" Cole checks his data pad, and I'm going to say that, like, charitably, like, they were most of the way up. And he says, "Looks like level 6, 4 short. Maybe we can find a manual override for the doors." And he starts to look at the control panel to kind of find this override and keeps talking. And he says, "But this isn't our biggest problem. Looks like someone has activated the Enforcer protocol." And he says that with like this kind of weight, this kind of gravity, but he doesn't kind of get a reaction. And he turns around and he doesn't see anything. Like, Luna's not there. He sees just an empty elevator behind him. And then he looks up and he can see Luna's feet disappearing through an access panel in the ceiling. After a second, her head appears and she says, "The what protocol?" Cole, kind of frustrated, says, "The Enforcer protocol. When this was our station, we had a small detachment of Enforcer units that we could send out ahead." Luna says, "What do they enforce?" "The law, generally. We used them sparingly in places where there was severe civil unrest." And Luna says, "Why only sparingly?" Cole says, "They were glitchy old things, easily hacked, easily turned against you. That was 30 years ago. Who knows how they've been upgraded and improved since?" And Luna kind of nods and says, "Okay, I'll be careful." And Cole, kind of realizing that she's made her decision and he's really not going to follow her, says, "You really going this alone?" Luna says, "Go find the rest of your crew. We're getting out of here together." And satisfied with that, he nods and says, "Keep an eye on your comms. Stay frosty." Luna says, "You too." "I'll be fine." And she pulls the access panel closed behind her and stands up on top of the elevator, looking at the distance between her and the level she's going to have to reach. And she says to herself, "I'll be fine." Okay, so this is a significant obstacle. Like, the station is locked down. There's apparently some enforcer bots or whatever this protocol is that that Cole is kind of alluding to. We can assume that there are now these things patrolling around, keeping order. And from the panic we saw in the hangar, we can imagine that, you know, they don't ask nicely for people to just kind of keep the noise down and go back to their domiciles. So yeah, this could be bad, and we're gonna have to try and figure out a way to get to where we need to be. So she looks around and she sees if there's anything she can use, because her leg is still in a bad way. Remember, she's kind of got a broken leg. It's in a brace. She's not going to be able to climb up this kind of corkscrew track, even if it's only like a few floors. There's no access ladders or anything like that, because that would be too easy. What would be the point? So she's going to have to see if there's anything that she can work with. And what I think there is this track that these elevators run on. You need the carriage to be attached with these runners. And there's wheels on each runner that kind of clamp on either side of the track. And I think that when there are repairs done here, I think that whoever's doing it is kind of doing it quickly, and they do the repairs and they just leave the parts lying on top of the carriage. They just get tossed aside. And Luna is kind of looking at this kind of huge collection of old wheels that have been replaced or they're burnt out or whatever. And she's just kind of going through them and kind of trying to find ones that are in decent enough condition, because her mind is racing with ideas. And hey, mine is too, because between episodes, I found this thing on Luna's Gearhead asset, which says, when you make a move to craft, repair, repurpose, or modify equipment or technology, add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit. So I did remember this and just thought, if she ever needs to build anything or like jury rig anything together, this would be handy. Oh, and hey, here we are. We're on top of a lift. We are several floors short of where we need to be, and Luna can't climb. So she's kind of picking up these old kind of spent wheels and trying to fit them onto the rails. And in amongst all of the ones that have been tossed aside and replaced, she does find a few that aren't kind of completely wrecked or worn out. They're still good. They still clamp around nicely, and the rail kind of sinks into the grooves that run around the circumference of the wheels. And I think also there's these discarded kind of gearboxes and kind of chassis parts. And I think that she's able to actually reconstruct quite quickly one complete runner, which is 4 small wheels on this chassis, and the chassis is about the size of a shoebox. And this isn't enough to get the elevator going. I'd say that like on attaching an elevator to the rail takes like, I don't know, 12 or 15 or even 20 of these little boxes. But Luna's managed to put together one, and she kind of looks up to where she needs to be, and it looks like maybe kind of 300 meters perhaps. It's a long way, but she's wondering if she can get some power to this little gearbox of like kind of makeshift runner that she's made. Could she pull herself up? So we're going to need some power. Like, that's all she needs. She's made the runner, put it together, and she looks around, and there's nothing on top of the elevator, but I think that there is on the other side, on the other wall, there's like a little maintenance cupboard, like a little cabinet, and in there, she opens it kind of easily. There's this kind of like assortment of tools in there, but she needs something motorized, which is lucky because in there, quite reasonably, would be something like an angle grinder. And she takes that out of the cabinet, and it's quite a heavy duty one. It's got like 2 handles. You need 2 hands to work it. And she kind of looks at it and thinks, if I can attach this to the runner, then it'll turn the wheels. And if it's powerful enough, the wheels will pull me upwards. And if she can generate enough power for a long enough time, then she should be able to get the 300 meters up to where she needs to be. You can hear from the doubt in my voice my conviction as to how well this plan's going to work. But this is Luna we're talking about. This is how she does things. And she's just going to commit to it. Because what else can she do? But I think this is going to be a move, isn't it? So this is going to be probably, I'd say, secure an advantage, which says, when you assess a situation, make preparations or attempt to gain leverage, envision your action and roll. And it's going to be expertise, isn't it? Like, it's not any of the others. It's using her kind of technical ability. Yeah, so, and we remember, we do get +1 from the asset. So we're going to try and cobble together a makeshift 1-person motorized kind of reverse zip line. And we're going to do so by securing an advantage, rolling plus wits. Okay, that is a strong hit. We will take that. We enjoy those. Okay, on a hit you succeed, on a strong hit take both, on a weak hit, yeah, you know the drill. So we are going to get +2 momentum and 1 on our next move. So we go up to 6 momentum and plus another bonus 1 from the asset. So that's up to 7. So that's good. We've pretty quickly kind of clawed back all the momentum we lost, burning it down in the hangar. So let's envision this. She swiftly kind of rigs this thing together, and the angle grinder, yes, it has sufficient juice to spin. And she tests it to see if the runner will take her weight. And it will. She's ready. She has got the runner on the rails and the angle grinder attached to it in her hands. She takes a deep breath and she gets ready to pull the switch. But then she looks up again at the distance. She's convinced that she can make it. It's a long way, but she is convinced that she can make it if only the angle grinder doesn't burn out or if she falls off and dies. Okay, so this is going to be another move, and that move is quite obviously going to be face danger, which says when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. And I actually think this is going to be with resolve, right? This is something that's going to take like considerable bravery, because if it fails, then she just dead. She just falls to her death. She is putting all of her faith in this makeshift contraption, and she's just going to have to trust that it's going to work. Like, so let's be bold. Let's be brave. Let's lean into being Luna for once and do something reckless and pull the trigger and face danger, rolling plus heart. Okay, that is a weak hit, which will do. We can get by with that, I think. It says, on a weak hit, you succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move -1. Okay, there's nothing we can do to amend that, even with the +1 from the last move. We can't kill that 10. So a weak hit it is. But we do make it. That is important. So let's envision this. Luna holds that deep breath, then lets it out. Takes her feet off the ground, pushes back from the wall, holding herself in place by the angle grinder. It feels secure. This is going to work. She thinks this is definitely going to work. This has to work. She resists the temptation to look behind her, to look down at the potential fall. She steels herself and clamps down on the handle, firing up the angle grinder. And she feels its power in her hands as it shakes and kind of reverberates up her arms, like through her bones. And she feels that metal brace that's also on her elbow. It kind of starts to sing. And then she feels the gears kick in and the wheels start to grip and turn slowly. And she feels herself being pulled along the track. And it's quite slow. And she manages to step sideways with it, stepping along the wall, keeping pace, almost kind of crab walking around this column. But then the pace picks up and the wheels start to turn quicker, and she finds herself moving along at an accelerated pace, and her legs are unable to keep up, and she stumbles, and then her feet leave the wall, and at the first rotation around the column, she is barely hanging on. As the speeds increase and the wheels turn and pick up pace, she is swung around. Her legs are flailing behind her as she rotates around the central lift shaft again and again and again. She hangs on desperately as sparks start to fly from this contraption she's made, and she had counted and estimated the amount of rotations that she'd need when she was down on the elevator, knowing where she needs to stop, but now she is just spinning and spinning, and it is wildly disorientating, and she can't keep count or can't clearly see the level numbers on the wall. She is moving too quickly. And then she realizes she doesn't know how to stop this thing. She doesn't have any brakes. She could let go of the trigger, but then she's just going to slide back down the track. And what if it doesn't kick back in if she pulls it again? She is in a bit of trouble. Whatever she's going to do, she has to do it fast because she must be close. She has gone round this column several times. She must be nearly there. And she has no choice but to make a guess at the number that she last saw passing in a blur. She has no choice but to guess that that is where she needs to be in terms of levels. And she lets go. She eases up on the handle and feels the motor wind down and the wheels stop turning. And then she jams her legs against the column to hold herself in place. She pushes herself backwards, waits for her head to become unscrambled from all the rotations, see if she can get her bearings. By no little amount of luck, she is where she needs to be, more or less, in terms of levels. But she's stuck on the wall. She is stuck on the wrong side. She's on the column. She needs to be on the other side where the doors exit out onto the level where she needs to be. And yeah, she's stuck. And it's a real effort to hang on. She has got like pain shooting up her arm and leg. She can't hold on forever. She has to do something. And she leans back and she can see just a little higher, kind of above where she needs to be, this little kind of service platform that's kind of hanging from somewhere. Because they're right at the top of the elevator shaft. Like, the elevator that she was on in the first place didn't go up this high. And she is kind of up to the top where, like, maintenance is done so it doesn't disrupt the other carriages and stuff. And she thinks that while she couldn't have walked the whole way up manually on the rails due to her leg and just the distance, she can probably shimmy along the last kind of like 10 meters of the rail manually. So, I mean, she hasn't really got a choice. So she reaches her foot down and it finds the rail. And the rail isn't very wide. It's maybe kind of 20 or 30 centimeters wide, enough to just about put her foot on. And then she puts her other foot down and kind of plants it there, and then takes one hand off the grinder and reaches up and hangs on the top rail. And it feels secure. So she lets go of the grinder with the other hand and grabs the rail with that and watches the angle grinder and this little contraption she built slowly fall away and follow the rail all the way round and round and round back down to where she started, where she hears it clatter onto the top of the elevator carriage down below. And that reminds her just how far like down it is. Like, one slip here and she will be done for, and she's just really grateful that the contraption she built got her up here. But yeah, she is still not out of the woods just yet. So she starts to slowly shuffle along the rail, kind of cautiously making her way up, and she actually gets close enough to reach the platform that's kind of suspended in between the central column and the doors that kind of lead to the elevator exit. It's kind of like a hanging metal gantry, this little kind of walkway, and she reaches out her left foot and it kind of gets onto the metal grating of the gantry, and then she pushes off with her other leg and gets that on there as well, and then kind of twists her body, and then now she is off the central column, laying face down on the gantry, which is kind of, doesn't really feel that secure, and it's starting to kind of swing, and the whatever it's attached to, the kind of chains that are kind of attaching it are kind of creaking, and she realizes that she needs to get off her stomach and get across. She gets to her feet, and it's a short walk to the elevator doors where she needs to be. It's about 5 meters, I'd say, across this gantry, and just about as she gets within reach of the elevator doors, just as she comes to the end of the platform, she feels one of the chains from which this gantry is suspended give. She grabs onto the handrail to kind of steady herself, but suddenly it tips to the right as another chain comes loose, turning the whole thing sideways, kind of throwing her off, but she clings on, and the momentum of the chains going is starting to swing the platform through the air from side to side, and she's kind of moving back towards the column and then back towards the doors, and as she gets close to the door she reaches out, but then it swings away back towards the column, and then she tries to pull herself closer, tries to use her body to kind of give this thing a bit of momentum so she can get her outstretched hand just there, but she can't quite get there again. Then she swings all the way back to the column, plants her feet on the wall and pushes off with all she's got and swings in again and lets go. And as she lets go, she makes the meter also jump, clings on, clatters into the doors, hangs onto the ledge where you would stand and walk out. Behind her, the gantry, last two chains snap, and the whole thing falls down the elevator shaft, smashing into the top of the elevator. She's got both hands now on the ledge, and she pulls herself up and sits. She perches on the step of the exit and looks down, sees how far she would have fallen, how far she very nearly just fell. But she notices something as she's looking down, trying to regain her composure. She notices that the brace around her leg has popped out of place. Just around the knee, there's metal twisted. As she tries to straighten her leg, it is agony, blinding agony. And this is really going to hinder her movement, more so than already having a broken leg and a brace. This is causing her considerable discomfort, so this is going to be our suffer move. We are going to take a hit to our health. But what I think I'm going to do is I think Luna's going to try and tough this out. So we're going to make the move Endure Harm, which says when you face physical injury, suffer -1 health for minor harm, which this is. Then, if you choose to resist the harm, roll plus health or iron. So health and iron are the same. They're both 3. So let's do this. Let's Endure Harm, rolling plus health. Cool. That's good. On a strong hit, it says you choose one. We can either shake it off, so we can take +1 health, or we can embrace the pain and take the momentum. I think, even though that's actually, they're both good options there, I think we'll shake this off and take the health back, because I think we might need it. So I think Luna knows that she's done for if she can't move around properly, and her movement is hindered enough as it is. Like, she's got a broken leg, and it's only the medical miracle of this brace that means that she can even walk at all. So I think she sits there on this ledge, like looking down into the void, and she kind of grits her teeth and grabs the twisted metal of the brace and uses all of her strength to kind of bend it back into position. And that causes her to scream out in pain. And that echoes through this vast, empty elevator shaft. And she kind of holds the metal in place as she fishes around in her kit for this small kind of pen-like soldering iron type thing. And she kind of shields her eyes, and with a few flashes of white hot metal, the brace is patched up. She can bend her leg again, and she tests it as she gets up to stand precariously on this ledge. So we'll put our health back up to 4 with that. And I think this might just count as a milestone, because if, like, evading an entire facility lockdown by using an angle grinder as a makeshift one-person kind of stairlift thing isn't overcoming a critical obstacle, then I don't know what is. So I think we can mark progress. So we're up to 6 on our vow to find Archer Barlow. Luna composes herself and kind of reaches for the manual override on the door. And the doors take their time, but eventually they open, and Luna steps out into a corridor very much unlike the others that she has seen so far in this place. And that is a real understatement, because the industrial look that is prevalent everywhere else is completely absent. The corridor is panelled with various shades of wood, and it's got frosted glass windows at regular intervals. Luna looks down, and there is parquet flooring underfoot, polished to a high sheen. She kind of sniffs the air, and if she is not mistaken, she can detect a floral scent. And somewhere in the distance, there is the faint sound of trickling water. It's safe to say that she is confused. This is definitely the level that Archer should be on. This is where the signal came from. This is it. This has to be. The corridor goes off in 2 directions, and each direction it bends out of sight, implying that this level is circular, which makes a great deal of sense because it follows the shape of the rest of the station. Luna is very wary of the frosted glass windows and considers trying to get low and kind of crawl down or kind of stay out of the way, but realizes that if someone was watching, then they would have seen her by now. There is no escaping that fact. So she decides to pick a direction and start walking. She's looking around for cameras as she does and any other thing that might imply that anyone might be watching her, but there is nothing. She has her rifle ready as she slowly stalks the corridor, the sound of trickling water getting steadily nearer and clearer. This place is weird. She has never seen anything like it. It is so at odds with the rest of the station, and for that matter, with every other station she has ever been on. This is what she would imagine a palace to be like. There are no maintenance panels, no door controls, no industrial grating, just polished wood and parquet floors. And she's walking this way for a few minutes until she reaches something new. The corridor continues ahead and around as usual, but now to the left it branches off. And as she backs up against the wall and creeps along it, she gets to what she now realizes is a corner. She hears around that corner the sound of water, loud and clear. She edges along the wall and inches her head out so she can have a look and see what is around the corner down this left turn. And the sight that she sees is, without doubt, one of the most incongruous things that she has ever seen. The turn leads to another corridor, going to now what she realizes is the center of the level. The parquet floor continues, but the wood-paneled walls do not. The corridor now forms a bridge as the walls and floor disappear on either side, and the bridge extends to the exact center of this level. And at the center of this level is a circular room, of which Luna can only see the outside. It is once again wood-paneled with smoked glass windows. The room is in effect an island, as it is surrounded on all sides by what can only be described as an ornamental pond, connected to the rest of the station only by this narrow bridge. Luna edges out a little further to see that the pond is teeming with life, with plump orange and silver fish busily weaving through the reeds and lily pads that fill the pond. But there is something else of note here. Standing out in this strange but peaceful scene, on the bridge, between where Luna stands and the room at the centre of the island where she needs to be, are 1, 2, 3, 4 boxy metal forms. Each stands about 2 meters high and about half that as wide, and they stand stock still side by side in rows of 2. At the top of each metallic frame is what looks like a flat, circular head with a faintly glowing yellow visor giving the appearance of eyes. On the side of each box are arms, heavy limbs that nearly touch the ground, leaning the frame forward, giving it an almost gorilla-like stance. And at the base of each of these is a set of 4 crab-like legs, each covered in what looks like tiny rows of caterpillar tracks. These are the enforcer bots that Cole mentioned, standing guard over the one way into this room, the room where Archer Barlow has to be. Luna has never seen an enforcer bot before, but she can instantly tell that they mean business. Her rifle, as powerful as it is, will not make a scratch on that thick armor plating. And whilst they aren't packing any obvious weaponry, she figures they will no doubt be equipped to cause her a significant problem, so she needs a plan. And this is galling because she has been trying to stealth about like this whole time and like go unseen, and like she hates this shit. She hates like all this stuff. She'd much prefer like a straight fight to all this sneaking around. And she ducks back into the corridor and catches sight of her reflection in one of the windows opposite, and like she looks ridiculous, like in a boiler suit and a beanie hat, and she quickly casts it off and gets her poncho back on and shakes out her raven hair with its blue and green streaks, and she instantly feels much more comfortable and also looks much, much cooler. I think it's very important to state that. So what's she going to do? I think that she is going to make the assumption that these things are pretty stupid, that they are just kind of running on basic security protocols. Like Cole said, they were easy to hack, and that people turned them against them like easily, he said. Now, she doesn't have anything that she can do that with. She can't hack them. She can't kind of slice into them. And even if she could, that's technically quite difficult. I don't know if she'd back herself to do that with the equipment that she's got to hand, which at the moment is basically like a very basic comms device. She can't fight them. So as much as it pains her, she's just going to have to do a little bit more sneaking. And looking at the lay of the land, she is now seeing something kind of formulating a route. And the way she sees it, she's going to have to swim. Now, the pond is shallow, but she figures that if she can get completely submerged, she can swim unseen under the bridge and around the enforcer bots, then pop up behind them. Like, she has no idea of the status of the door on the other side, whether it is locked or not, but she will have to cross that bridge when she comes to it, quite literally in this case. It isn't much of a plan, granted, but fuck it, it's what we've got. So, assuming these things are done and running on basic security protocols, she also assumes she should be able to distract them. And she roots around in her pack for something heavy. And she quickly finds something that fits the bill. And it's like a battery pack or something. Something that will make like a significant loud sploosh. So this is going to be a move. And once again, I feel like we've done this quite a lot in this episode. This is going to be secure and advantage, which says when you assess a situation, make preparations or attempt to gain leverage, envision your action and roll. And this is definitely plus shadow again, right? We're attempting to deceive these dumb robot cops with this battery being thrown into the water to get them to kind of turn away. So she feels the weight of the battery in her hand and looks for a spot to throw it, like past the bridge, like over the heads of these bots, and hopes that it will make them turn around for like just a second so she can get into the water. And I think that's the point at which she notices that the pond and the surroundings are all lit with these really big hanging globe-like lights, and they're hanging in kind of bunches of 3. And she thinks now that will make much more than a sploosh. So she takes aim and throws. So let's secure an advantage, rolling plus shadow. Okay, that is a weak hit. On a hit, you succeed. Yeah, we've done this before. We're going to choose one of the two, +2 momentum or +1 the next move, and we will take that +1 on the next move, because the second the battery leaves her hand, she knows that was a good pitch. Her aim is true, and she watches it as it sails into one of the big glowing orbs and just smashes right through it. And as it does, she is already on the move. She's staying low. She's ready to plunge into the pond. And these huge kind of chunks of the glass of these lights like start to fall down towards the water. And she can see the bots have already turned their flat heads to look in that direction. The shattering of the lights and the sound it makes as these huge pieces fall into the water below is incredibly loud. And given how serene this kind of scene is, she's like even more confident that it will have like covered her as she hops down into the water. She gets to her knees and she submerges herself fully and begins to swim. And this is going to be another move, and that move is face danger. So when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action and roll. And this is definitely with stealth. So let's do it. Let's face danger, rolling plus shadow. Even with the +1 from the previous move, it's another weak hit because we rolled another 10. Like, it seemed like we've rolled a lot of these today. On a weak hit, you succeed, but not without cost. Make a suffer move -1. So it's important, yep, we make it again. And I think if we've said we've made it, I'm just going to tie something up now and then narrate it all as one. Because if we have successfully evaded the bots and reached the room, then I would say that we've reached a milestone. We have overcome a critical obstacle by getting around them. So let's mark progress. Find Archer Barlow up to 8 out of 10. And then in addition, we will then roll to fulfill our vow, which is a progress move. It says when you reach the end of your quest, roll the challenge dice and compare to your progress. We have 8 progress, so let's just do it. Okay, a weak hit. On a strong hit, your vow is fulfilled. Mark a reward on your quest legacy track, which Luna doesn't have. And on a weak hit, there is more to be done, or you realise the truth of your quest. Okay, that's fine. Let's envision all of that as one thing. So Luna pulls herself through the water, sending these kind of clusters or skulls of fish scattering about in all directions. The water is warm and pleasant, but very shallow, and she can feel the brace on her leg catching the bottom of the pond as she kicks her legs and causing pain to shoot through her lower body, making holding her breath much more difficult. But she is almost there. She can see the bridge above her and the dark shape of the room getting closer and closer. A few more kicks and she can emerge and then try and figure out how to open the door, whether she has to shoot it open or bundle through. It doesn't matter. If she can just keep going for a few more meters, she will be there. And that is when she sees something else in the water. Suddenly, there are dozens of black, eel-like creatures beginning to swarm around her. She feels them wrap around her body and she tries to pull them away, but they constrict and contract, and as she tugs at them, she realizes that they don't feel organic. And she starts to panic. She realizes they are not living creatures, but cables. She feels the cable tighten around her and feels herself being pulled sharply upwards and emerges from the water with a gasping breath, finding herself wrapped in these thick black rubber cables being winched upwards towards the enforcer bots standing on the bridge. One of them has an arm held out in the air from which a tangle of cables protrudes, and she is being reeled in, pulled up towards it, hanging there like a fish pulled by the tail out of the water. The other 3 bots are now inspecting her. One of the bots slowly approaches, and she instinctively kicks out with her good leg. And luckily it hits in just the right spot on its chest plates. She hears the caterpillar tracks start to whir on its crab-like legs, but that can't stop it tipping backwards off the bridge and into the water. Another bot comes in, with a pincer-like claw extending out, crackling with an ominous red energy. She wriggles and writhes and tries to get some momentum going, managing to just swing out of the way as it moves in to get her. The claw thrusts out into the air where Luna was and scythes through the limb of the other that holds the cables, instantly releasing Luna, dropping her to the ground. She styles it out into a forward roll and runs towards the room, runs towards the door. It is so close. And that is when she feels herself once again restrained as a weighted net is shot around her from the last bot standing. The weights on each corner of the net wrap around her, enveloping her in the coarse fibres of the heavy netting. But her forward momentum and the force of the net being shot carries her on, sending her stumbling into the door, which she smashes through, sending splinters everywhere. She hits the floor, a very different floor, marble maybe, but it's all a blur. And now she's sliding along what she thinks is a marble floor, turning over now on her back, unable to move her arms or legs, cocooned in a net. She eventually comes to a stop, panting, barely able to catch her breath, wet and covered in pondweed. After a second, 2 faces come into view, standing over her looking down. One she recognizes, and one she does not. The face she recognises is Archer, and the look he's giving her is also one she recognises, a mixture of astonishment and bemusement. She hears the other person speak. It's a male voice. It says, "Fascinating." Archer says, "Have you been to the hangar? Have you seen the eclipse?" And Archer looks around the room and says, "Where's Griff?" And Luna, still unable to move, spits out some pondweed and says, "Yeah, funny story." Thank you a million times. Thank you for watching. Please like this video, subscribe if you have not done so already, and click on the little bell icon so you can be notified as soon as the next video drops. I'll be back next time, but until then, it is farewell and safe passage.